Welcome to Honest Whispers Review. On this video, I'll be reviewing Marvel's Modern Era X-Men series, Psylocke 8-inch medium statue, released on 2004 by Diamond Select Toys, limited to 3,000, based on the artwork by Jim Lee, and sculpted by Feligno. I'm going to go over 5 different categories. First category is the design. That's basically the pose, the execution, or the presentation of the statue. And first thing I want to point out is the base of the statue. Each character on the series comes with a unique base where you could display them next to each other. You could see there's a jagged edge here. It looks like a puzzle piece. So the concept is a nice idea, but unfortunately I give it a flaw in the concept, just because you would have to get every character to display it the way it's supposed to be. Otherwise, if you're missing one character, you might have one character that's going to be detached among the other characters. So due to that flaw, I mean, they could have made it universal where any character could have been displayed next to each character, which would have brought more of an, I guess, a combination of the way you could display. So that's a slight flaw. Overall, the design is great. It's not an action pose. It looks like she's ready for action. She has her right foot slightly on her toes. She has her sidekick knife charged, and one of my favorite parts of the statue is, or the design of the statue, is her hair. The way it looks like it's flowing in the wind really has a dynamic effect, and a lot of nice details. The belt is pretty nice. It's not flapping, but then it's still kind of off the body. So the design, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Next category is sculpting. Sculpting is done well. As I mentioned before, in the hair, a lot of details. A lot of details on the muscle tone, muscle definition, and even on the costume you could see certain areas where it bunches up, especially in the joint areas, and the costume, the way it wrinkles, has a nice realistic effect. A lot of muscle definition throughout the body. And details. But there's certain areas I think they did a little too much. For instance, the hair strand on the middle of the head or face running down her forehead. It's a nice idea, but the execution is just wrong, especially when it's attached to the face. After a while, when you keep looking at it, she looks like she's from Phantom of the Opera. If that hair strand wasn't there, it would have still looked like Psylocke and would have looked great. I think there's certain areas in the muscle definition that's just too much. Of course, it's not always the sculptor's fault, but it could be the casting or the molding. But I think there's just a little bit too much muscle definition, especially in that arm area. The abs a little bit too much, and on the inner thighs it's just a little bit too much. It just gets indented to a point where it's a little unnatural. I don't mind muscle definition, but sometimes when it digs in too much, it's pretty bad. I mean, you could have simplified a little bit. especially right there on the left elbow. The butt and the legs overall is nice, but I do want to point out there's like a huge dimple on above her, on her upper booty right there. It's like somebody pressed a thumb into it. So unless you're looking at it close, but really can't tell. So from far away, really can't see too much of those flaws. Again, certain muscle definition, I don't mind some, but when it's indented like that so much, it like looks a little unnatural. So because of that, I'm gonna give the sculpting a 7 out of 10. Next is the painting. Painting overall is done well as well, like the sculpting, but sometimes, just like the sculpting, a little bit too much. You can see a lot of black and gray added to the hair, the costume, to add the shadow effect, the light and shadow, the light and dark effect. Doesn't look too bad, but it could have been a little bit more subtle. Just makes it look a little too I don't know the right word for it, but it makes it a little too like thick, the hair strand. So there could have been some areas that could have been more smoother. There's a lot of paint that runs over the line, especially right here. You can see the skin tone color overrunning the line. So now you see that indented line running all the way down. You can see that all over the costume, right here on the upper right armband, as well as the left armband, not as much. And the hair strand. I mean, it could have been so much better without it. So there's some color, skin tone color running over the hair strand. So like certain areas like the abs, it's sculpted and they added black to define it more. So it just looks a little unnatural. Same goes with the costume all over the area. Like, you don't even need black in certain areas and they just added it. So it kind of gives it a dirty, rustic look. All the paint is basically like matte finish. If they add a gloss finish to the costume, would have looked a lot better. So due to that, I'm going to give this painting a 7 out of 10. The next category is value. The value, when this was released, it came out, I think the retail was around $69.95. And there isn't much available right now, so the demand is definitely high. A new one I saw when I was making this video was at $300, so the value, aftermarket value, is definitely up there. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. And finally, the overall score, I'm going to give this a 8 out of 10. The quality could have been better, but the overall design, the look, it really does capture Psylocke. And her face isn't too ugly. Usually that's a deal breaker. For some reason, sculptors can't really get Psylocke's face right. But her face isn't bad. Her body Looks proportional, looks realistic. And this you could pretty much pose from almost any angle you want. So you could pose it like this, and then if you get kind of tired of that look, you could pose it from this angle. I mean, so there's definitely added value when you have a statue like this, where you could pose it or display it in different angles so that you kind of have a new looking statue in a way. So to recap, the design, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Sculpting, 7 out of 10. Painting, 7 out of 10. Value, 10 out of 10. Overall, 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Until next time.